Look for the zombie fish.
Welcome to Rotten Book Review. My name is Jamie, and this book is called The Ritual. Originally published in 2011, this book, written by British scribe Adam Nevill, actually went on to become a major motion picture in 2017, which just about escaped the wrath of the critics' reviews. Having read some Adam Nevill before, mostly his short stories, I was interested to see how his well-crafted and individual brand of horror was going to translate into a longer format. So we have four 30-something guys who used to be friends who've decided to go on holiday together in Europe's oldest forest in Norway. It's a bit of a cliched setup here, but I know I'm in good hands, so I'm willing to wait for things to get good. Complaints, little injuries, arguments that this was a terrible idea. We get what we kind of expect. But kudos to Nevill, who is able to really create some tension between these four guys who start to really dislike each other. Sadly, when I look back on this novel, it's actually the dissension in the group that turned out to be the most engaging part. As they continue to press on, as their situation becomes more desperate, the general complaining and hopelessness of their situation is repeated to an extent that it starts to make for weary reading. And so rather than putting myself in this situation and considering how horrible it may be to be stranded in some endless, dark and constantly raining forest, I just start to feel like I want to get out of this forest because it's becoming a bit boring. There are some moments where Nevill reminds us that he is a capable horror writer who's able to reproduce what it is that's inside his head. But as we get to around the halfway mark, there is a bit of a jarring shift that is unsettling and not in a good way. I think it's fairly well known that there's a bit of a sharp gear change in this book, so it's not a spoiler to say so. But it's as if two different stories are trying to merge, but the effect really is that they just awkwardly crash into each other. We've got used to a certain pace, we're making the investment, maybe we'll be rewarded further down the line, but it's very much like running out of one cinema screen and going into another one. And the big problem with this shift is it stretches the realms of plausibility. Nevill has worked hard to build that sense of being alone, of being lost, of being watched. And yet as the reader, I started to feel more separate from the experience. And Nevill also has an interesting take, and I feel overrates human endurance. And as a footnote here, just to be extra critical, one of the characters, when they're in a particularly sorry state, their dialogue, talking in long sentences and fairly eloquently, doesn't really seem to square. Once you get used to this new scenario, Nevill does manage to find some momentum again and engage you with some pretty good passages, even though you go forward probably still holding a grudge. Near the end of this novel, things come to a head with what we simply haven't seen anywhere near enough of, or rather just felt the threat from, which is the main antagonist of the story, the main reason why I purchased this book. And though there's a nice little neat philosophical ending, I'm left feeling that my time could have been spent better. I'm glad that I had previously read some Adam Nevill, that I've got a taste for his particular brand of horror already. Had The Ritual been my first experience of his, I may not have had the desire to dig into the rest of his bibliography. I feel this novel outstays its welcome, makes you wait too much for a reward, and then arguably gets a little bit silly. I'm going to have to give The Ritual 2.5 fish out of 5.